Today we're going to be talking about fine motor skills. Fine motor skills are the small movements that use the small muscles in the fingers, the toes, the wrists, the lips and the tongue. The focus of fine motor skills is usually on developing the skills and the small muscles in the hand, but hand-eye coordination, where a person uses their vision to control the movements and actions of their small muscles, is also an important component of fine motor skills. Gross motor skills are the bigger movements, such as rolling over and sitting, and using the large muscles in the arms and the legs and the torso and the feet. But today we're going to be concentrating on the small ones, the fine motor skills. Fine motor skills are important to help children to interact with their world and perform everyday tasks. They help our children to become more independent and with things like dressing and eating, and when they get to school with opening their lunchbox, putting their jackets on and off, tying their shoelaces, all those things that we hope our children learn to do and to develop. So they really are important to their development and for them to be comfortable, confident and happy in their world. They're also the basis for developing skills to help with their learning to read and write, their literacy and their numeracy. As with child development, all areas of child development, all children will develop their fine motor skills at their own pace and will demonstrate different strengths and abilities dependent on their interest and their individuality. However, there is a general pattern of fine motor skill development, and there are milestones that are typical for all age groups. You will have watched your children with delight as they grow and develop new skills. Today, we're particularly looking at the expected fine motor skills of your child who is about to start school. For preschool age children, so children aged between 3 and 5 years, they will begin to gain good control of their fine motor skills and start to master tasks like doing up their buttons and using scissors. They'll refine their drawing and writing skills and can often copy letters and numbers and shapes and can often create quite complex drawings. From about 3, most children establish whether they're right or left-handed. For school-age children, they'll continue to enhance their fine motor skills. Their drawing and writing and colouring and scissor skills become more adept and fluid. As their muscles strengthen, children find these activities less tiresome and often engage in them with more spontaneity. Many children who find fine motor skills and the tasks they involve challenging will avoid participating in these tasks due to feeling a little bit frustrated, often feeling tired and fatigued because they've just tried so hard and they really don't like to feel like they're failing. This produces a negative cycle, and as these children will then engage in fewer opportunities, then they won't improve their fine motor skills. Children learn best when they're genuinely interested in what they are doing and when they enjoy what they're doing and when they have success. When thinking about ways to improve our children's fine motor skills, many people tend to focus on the traditional experiences, such as threading and drawing and painting and gluing and cutting with scissors or using Play-Doh with rollers and shape cutters. There's nothing wrong with any of these methods, but for some children who are struggling with their fine motor skills and therefore not really very enthusiastic about trying to engage in those activities, we need to be a little bit more adventurous. Thinking of something more interesting and engaging, something they're interested in, and that will help them to be encouraged to participate and build those fine motor skills. Let's talk about some of the ways that you might be able to do this at home, looking at some of the things that you have at home and not needing particular resources or things that you need to purchase. Having a variety of different sorts of materials to make a mark, to do writing, to paint and create will really capture your children's interests or excitement with being creative. So try using some different sorts of paints, chalks, pencils. Have have some glue and scissors and hole punches. You might like trying a blackboard. In the early stages, writing implements that are a thicker grip are a great way to start. Sidewalk chalk is an interesting way to use chalk. Drawing on your footpaths, it washes away, but it's a lovely canvas for being creative and a different way of making a mark or a picture. Cutting and punching holes is another great way to build up those muscles. Children will often find cutting challenging. Try to have the right size scissors and lots of different materials for them to try cutting with. Just get them started with it and then help them develop those skills. You can start with cutting perhaps items like the junk mail. Just get them the action of cutting and then they can move on from there. A hole punch is a fun way. Kids always love using a hole punch to punch out holes from paper. And it's a great way to build up that squeeze muscle of our fine motor skills. Hole punch like this one, where they are squeezing, is also another way to build up those muscles to strengthen for tasks like cutting. Clothes pegs are another great tool to help develop fine motor skills. The squeezing action helps to develop the strength in the pincer grip and those fine muscles in fingers that they will use when they're learning to write and manipulate a pen or a pencil. We can make it fun. You might like to use them to create some craft pieces, perhaps legs on an animal. You can also use them with other items that are inexpensive to create some games. Here, I've used some colour paint swatches that I picked up from the hardware store. I've used a piece out of an old box and just cut the colours and added them to the board. I've also used a small piece to add to the end of a peg. So the action of pegging them on, but it also becomes a colour match game. Using those fine motor skills to reattach, but matching the colours in the process. Simple and inexpensive to create, but a fun activity. Using household items to help develop the strength in your hands by picking up different things. It can be a fun game, it can be a challenge. You might like to see who can do it the fastest or who can do it the most. You could start with a peg, picking up beans. It could be a bit tricky. It might be pom-poms, maybe even cotton balls, pieces of pasta and rice grains. You might also like to use some of the other items you have at home, perhaps tweezers or even the kitchen tongs. Lots of fun to make a game, and it helps to build up those fine motor skills with all that squeezing and closing and opening. Play-Doh is another great tool, and I think it's popular with every child. It's lots of fun and it's a great way to develop those fine motor skills with lots of rolling, squishing, manipulating to make lots of different shapes. It's fun to make at home, and it's a really cheap and economical way to have a tool always available at home. You could even try adding some textures to it. You might like to add some rice or perhaps even some glitter to make it just that little bit more interesting. But it's a great one for developing lots of fine motor skills. As we said before, making it interesting and a little bit different is a great way to get the children to engage. Here's an idea for making a squishy bag to help manipulate and move different things in the bag, helping again to develop those fine motor skills. I have just a clip lock bag. Inside, I've already placed a little bit of glitter and just some dried beans. I also have some pasta pieces and I've got some pom-poms. You're pretty much unlimited to what you can put in there, as long as they're not sharp and are going to pierce the plastic bag. And I have some hair gel, just from the supermarket. It doesn't need to be a super expensive or really great hair product, but for the purpose of this, we just need a nice gel. A couple of tablespoons into the bag. It could be a smaller bag. Now seal it off really well. When I'm using this at home or with children, I also seal it off with some tape just to make sure it can't come undone. Move out all the air, seal it off, and then squish it around. You can also add just a little drop of food colouring, again, just to give it another interest aspect. Squish it around. It has a really, really fun feeling, but you can develop those muscles by getting them to push the different items around in the gel. This is a fun one you might like to try at home too. Threading beads is a traditional way to help develop fine motor skills. And it's something your children might do at preschool or even when they come to school. But it's another great thing that you can practice at home without needing to buy beads or any threading items. If you have some pasta and some string, it's the perfect way to practice at home. Inexpensive and always available. You can colour the pasta with some food dye, but it's just as much fun, and for the purpose of developing the fine motor skills, just straight from the pantry. Exercising and strengthening the muscles in our hands is another important aspect. Simply by opening and closing them, you might like to get your children to do that. But if you can make it more fun, they're going to want to do it. If you have a spray bottle at home, that's a great way to practice that squeezing motion, spraying the water. You might like to take them outside. They can spray some patterns on the cement path with water. It'll dry up, leaving no evidence, but it's a fun way for the kids to practice that squeezing muscle action. Another way is a stress ball. Might even be good for the mums and dads. I've made this one using some rice, a balloon, just filling it with a funnel, filling it up with the rice until it's filled right up and filling quite tight, tying it off really well. On this one, I've actually put another balloon on the outside just to make it a little bit more interesting. But it is a great way to practice those squeezing of those fine motor skills, building them up, making them nice and strong. There are a lot of commercially available games and products to help develop fine motor skills. Jigsaw puzzles, Lego blocks, dominoes, lots of different board games. But don't forget the items you might already have at home, some of your recycling items. Here, I have a collection of bottle tops from my milk and juice bottles. These are great, simply, for manipulating and using those fine motor skills. But I've also created a game. I've used some of the bottle tops to make a domino game. Instead of numbers and dots, I'm using different shapes, but I've simply drawn on the top 2 shapes, and we can play a game like dominoes of matching the shapes. It could be played by a child by themselves, or it could be a game with another one. So let's have a look how it might work. Let's start with 1. I've got a heart and a square. I need to match another one. Moving another heart and a square. The squares are matching next to each other. Now I need to find another one to match a heart. Here's one. A heart and a diamond. Let's see how we can go now. I need to match a heart or a diamond. A diamond. A diamond and a triangle. Match a triangle. And a square. Another square and a diamond. You get the idea? By simply using recycled bottle tops. They're also great to do some pattern making, shapes, counting. Again, using those fine motor skills to manipulate them, but developing some other skills, colours and shapes and numbers. There are always lots of things at home that you can use to help develop those fine motor skills. Kids love dressing up, so maybe getting out some of your clothes. It's always fun if they're big or different, or your clothes, practicing those zippers and buckles and buttons. But you can also have a look around, again, in your recycling or even in your cupboards and your pantries. Boxes from the recycling are great to manipulate as building tools, building up blocks, making buildings and shapes, manipulating them with their fine motor skills, all those little muscles, and fun, and not costing anything. Your children will use their fine motor skills to hold their pencils when they're writing. Children with underdeveloped fine motor skills will often find writing tiresome and quite difficult and become disinterested. Let's have a look now at how the pencil grip develops.
Pencil use develops in stages as children develop. Children need to practice these skills to learn what to do. Every child develops differently. Children start holding markers as early as 1. They usually start with a fist, then they use a grip like this. Between 3 and 4, they grip with their fingers. Then by 4 to 5, they're using a tripod-style grip. They then start to use more individual finger movements rather than whole hand movements.
I hope some of the ideas we've shared today about developing strong, fine motor skills will help you and your child. Maybe you'd like to give some of them a go.